Hi, welcome to the Feature Spotlight webinar for December 2024. It's a pleasure to be with you again this month. I'm Dale Franks, and let's talk about what we have to cover this month. So I suppose the first thing I should do is share my screen. So let me get that out of the way. So this month on the Feature Spotlight webinar, we have just a couple of things that we need to talk about. I've got really three topics queued up for us today. One is a new feature in the product. Well, I don't know that we can call it a new feature in the product. It is an existing feature that is going to do entirely new things. It is collaborative document authoring, and we are opening it up for use with Office 365, SharePoint 365, Office installations. Microsoft has gotten very confusing about how they offer Office now, but we're going to make it work with the online version of Office, and that is coming in 6.1.300. We're going to spend some time looking at that today. I've mentioned it before. I haven't had time to get into much detail about it. Today, we're going to get into at least a minimal level of detail about what it entails. There are some other enhancements that are coming in 6.1.300 that we're going to discuss. And of course, there's some bug fixes that we have to discuss as well. Now, don't forget, if you have any questions about anything that we're going to talk about, hit the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question. I will see the notification and I will answer it before we leave the broadcast. So SharePoint / Office 365 Collaborative Document Authoring, or CDA, because Collaborative Document Authoring takes too long to say and I'm lazy. We currently have CDA and another similar feature for document markup called Collaborative Document Markup, or CDM. They use two different services, but both of them are available in the product. Both of them are separately licensed components of Process Director, so you may or may not have them in your installation. CDA uses a service called OnlyOffice. OnlyOffice provides the PowerPoint, Excel, Word-like user interfaces to collaboratively edit documents. Multiple authors can edit the document all at the same time. Changes are tracked in the document so that you know who made what changes. At some point, someone can go into the document and review those changes and accept or reject them to update the document. It's very convenient. We are not replacing OnlyOffice with Office 365 or Microsoft Office. So OnlyOffice will still be available. OnlyOffice has a big pro to it, which is that it is super easy to use and super easy to integrate into Process Director, at least from your point of view as an end user. The con is that it is a third-party service. It is, from our perspective at BP Logix, a black box. We don't know what happens inside the black box. We just hope the black box works. And for the last, I don't know, I guess 4 or 5 years that we have had CDA running, the black box has worked. Now, a little background. In addition to Process Director, BP Logix sells a couple of other products. We sell a product, and these products are both built on the Process Director platform, but they are standalone consumer off-the-shelf software applications. One of them is called PubPro, and that is a publication approval application that is specifically tailored towards FDA regulated industries. So pharmaceuticals, medical devices, things like that. And it does things like, checks debarment status with the government and the Office of the Inspector General and FDA, and it's designed for medical publication approvals, submitting something to a peer-reviewed journal or a presentation at a conference or a scientific paper of some other kind. We have a second product called Appruvia. Now, that is similar to PubPro in that it is a publication approval process, but it is not specifically designed for FDA-regulated companies. It is a more open and general publication approval process. It could be, approving publications for public release. It could be publishing in some sort of peer-reviewed journal, but it doesn't need to have all of the FDA-related bits to it. So it's a good general document approval thing, which, by the way, if you're in just a generic industry where you need to do document approvals, I strongly suggest that you contact your BP Logix account representative and inquire about Appruvia, because I don't think anybody here actually works in an FDA-regulated industry. But if you do, then contact your BP Logix support representative or account representative about PubPro instead. But both of these applications have CDA built into them, and they've been working fine. However, we do have one customer that is, well, they're amazing. They're an amazing customer. They love the product. However, they're also amazing in their ability to find ways to break OnlyOffice. And so to solve that problem, and anytime that something happens with the OnlyOffice, we have to work with them because it's their product, OnlyOffice, to get this stuff fixed. So that's maybe a step that we don't want to go through, and a step that this customer doesn't want to go through as well. So we've made the decision to use Microsoft Office, specifically Office 365 Online, as part of CDA. As a concept, that sounds very simple. In practice, it is very, very difficult. And so the major new feature that is coming in version 6.1.300 is going to be the implementation of Microsoft Office Online, either via O365 or via SharePoint, to use CDA in 6.1.300. So that is our major new feature that is coming to the product. It's very difficult to implement, and it's going to require several changes to the product to ensure that it works in all of the circumstances in which you might be running O365 online. So there is a new data source type that is going to be called the SharePoint CDA data source. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a version of the product running where I can demonstrate this directly. However, the developers have been kind enough to supply some screenshots, so we will be able to look at those screenshots. So this is a screenshot for the SharePoint CDA data source, and it will be a new data source type. It is called currently SharePoint CDA, the CDA standing for Collaborative Document Authoring. And it has the normal SharePoint OAuth connection features, including the tenant and client IDs and the client secret. It will have to be set up in the same way as the SMTP OAuth has to be set up. Although, technically, if you already have SMTP OAuth set up, your tenant ID, your client ID, and I believe your client secret will all be the same values. So you'll be able to have two different data sources, but that you'll be able to share those values from your Azure AAD application, your Azure registered application for both of these data sources. So it'll be very similar to what we're already doing for SharePoint and Azure OAuth. So this will be a new data source that gets created. In addition to that, there are also going to have to be some changes to the installation settings page. And so we are going to have to add this SharePoint CDA data source ID. It will be a dropdown which contains your data source ID. So this SharePoint CDA data source that we just showed you, technically you could have more than one SharePoint CDA on your system, and you would have to go to your installation settings page and choose which of those SharePoint CDAs data sources you wanted to use for that particular instance of Process Director. So, I mean, you could have a SharePoint data source that looks at a test server, and then you could have one that looks at a real server. You would have to go into installation settings, and you'd have to decide which one is your canonical version of SharePoint CDA. So there are going to be some changes to content list objects. There's a new one, and there's going to be a slight change to the UI to ensure that we can make this work. There is a bunch of work that is associated with this. For example, while it works really great in OnlyOffice, and it was fairly easy to implement, the attachment properties for attached documents. So the way that it works, the way that it's supposed to work, is that you upload a document into your process. There's generally an upload and attach control on a form. You attach the document, you upload it to the form, and then using CDA, other people can open that document, edit it. The editing opens up the CDA functionality, which currently is in OnlyOffice. And you can do all of the cool things that you would normally do in Microsoft Word, but the document is being edited in a central location via a central service, and multiple people can edit it simultaneously. That's the nice thing about CDA, is I don't have to have every single person who's reviewing the document download it, make comments, save the document, upload it. And if I have 5 people doing that, I've got 5 separate copies of the document, all of which have different comments. And someone has to download all 5 of those copies and manually review all of those comments and incorporate them into some canonical version of the document. The nice thing about CDA is we just skip past all of that. Everybody gets to edit the same document once you've attached it to the system. However, once you've attached it to the system, there are a lot of properties about that document that need to be respected by both Process Director and the editing tool that you're using, currently OnlyOffice, but for 6.1.300, we're also adding Office 365. And so all of these little check boxes that you see checked in this screenshot, they all have to work. And they all have to work just as they do with OnlyOffice and just as they do with any other normal document attachment that you attach to the process, preferably, or the form in necessity, so that you can properly edit the document. You can see the changes that have been made. You can see the appropriate description, perhaps even the appropriate icon for the document, because obviously different document types have different icons. We need to be able to show those correct icons. It is very complicated getting all of this to work with Office 365. So outside of bug fixes, this is really the main work that is going on in the product for 6.1.300. And this is the new feature that we'll be introducing with that version. There are other things that have to be taken care of and there are, I didn't actually do a count, but it's like there's nearly 100 different JIRA tickets for different aspects of making this work, including how does doc versioning work? We've had that all figured out. Office does it differently, and Office handles document versioning completely differently. So that is a hurdle that we have to master so that we have some sort of predictable and reliable means both in Process Director and in O365 of knowing what document version we're looking at. So we have to reconcile that. The history of changes, something else that Office handles differently than OnlyOffice. So that has to be reconciled as well. Track changes is another issue. OnlyOffice kind of by default, or at least the way that we've implemented it, by default has track changes turned on. That's not true with Office. And so the ability to get a document open, to get track changes on and working properly, because everybody has to open it up with track changes on, that's another hurdle. Another big hurdle is the external sharing problem. That's just not a problem at all with OnlyOffice. As long as I have that URL with the appropriate token in OnlyOffice, I can just pop the thing open, pop the document open, and do all the work I need to do in it. O365 is different because Microsoft is serious about Office licensing. So we have to come up with a way to be able to allow us to share a document that is in O365 with someone who is outside our organization and who doesn't have the credentials just to pop open Office and open the thing up. So, we not only have to cover people who are inside our organization, which are generally not a problem, but how are we going to do document sharing and collaborative editing and authoring with people who exist outside of our authorization and who technically don't have the credentials to log into our SharePoint or O365 instance and open up that document. So that is another hurdle. There are many other arcane things. As I said, there's probably 100 or so Jira tickets on SharePoint / O365 integration with CDA. So it is a big ask. I think once we get it down, it's going to be a much better product. And having the option of going to OnlyOffice. And here's the other problem. And I don't know that it's a problem, but it is a concern that some customers have, especially if you're in a regulated industry. And this just happens to be one of our FDA regulated customers. I really don't want to have especially proprietary data. So it really goes beyond just FDA regulation. Now we're getting into sort of a corporate security kind of deal. Do I trust OnlyOffice with my data, whether it's, a scientific paper or some press release that I need to have a lot of approval for because it's some important announcement, whatever it may be? Do I want to give that to a third-party service, OnlyOffice? Sure, they have every indication of being very reliable and very trustworthy and very respectful of your data and not really being able to access your data for any length of time. But do you really want to trust that? Or would you rather have all of your editing done inside your network, inside the version of O365 that you own and control? That way, you know that the only person who has your data, especially if you're dealing with some proprietary or very sensitive data, is you, is your organization. You're not having to go to any sort of outside party to share this data. And so there are a lot of things that we have to think about to get this O365 deal to work. But apparently, even though I don't have a version of it that I can show you that is ready yet for release internally in BP Logix for testing, it's apparently going well on the development side. And, they are coming across some of these issues and these weird wrinkles that are fundamental differences between the way Microsoft wants things to be done and the way that OnlyOffice will allow you to do things. But we are conquering those, and this is going to be the new feature in the product. Well, the one major new feature in the product for 6.1.300. It is not, however, the only thing that we are changing in the product. So we are tossing in some other enhancements. Number one is the export array to CSV custom task. Now, we have had to add something new here. And actually, let me do this out of order since I'm already here. Um, Item number 3, where it says concept share support removed, rather than going and showing you something else and then having to come back here, let me just show you this right here. If you look on any attach control, not the show attach, but the attach control, one of the tabs on the attach control is more button properties. And for many years, you have seen this concept share project, concept share folder, concept share version. You have never used it. I can guarantee that because we've only had one customer that ever used it, and they're the ones that asked that we put it into the product. However, they have stopped using concept share altogether. Since no one else apparently uses it, it's not really widely used as far as we can tell among any of our customers. As I said, we've only had one customer that ever did use it, and they've stopped. There's no reason to have these properties in the product. On this version, which just was installed yesterday afternoon, we have not yet removed the properties from the UI, although I can tell you that none of them work in this version of the product, but they are going to be removed from the product completely. So 6.1.300 will remove all concept share support. I should use the term concept share support with a grain of salt because concept share support doesn't work right out of the box. There are some minor changes that have to be made in the product to make concept share work. So while the properties are there and they're useful, your product has to be configured to use concept share. So it's not just an out of the box feature of the product. And well, why are we talking about it? For 6.1.300, it simply won't be a feature of the product. So having said that, now we can move on to what I mentioned just a few minutes ago, which is the custom task for exporting an array. And we'll just go in here real quick. And I thought I had configured this, but perhaps I simply did not save this form. So let's go into Documents and go to Export Array to CSV. We'll add that custom task. Let's open up the custom task configuration screen. And because I am on my Bleeding Edge server, it opens up all of my forms to fill up my entire screen. So let's make this smaller, and eventually the form will show. Here's the problem, and I don't know whether this is an enhancement or a bug fix, but because it is a new property, I'm going to sell it as an enhancement. We have several customers that need to export arrays to CSV files. Then they consume those CSV files in various database systems. Now, by default, whenever we did the export as a CSV file, there is a trailing comma after the last column. Some customers have started to say that's causing us some problems in our import process because we're hitting that last comma. Our database is expecting an additional column past that column or that comma. There is no additional column because in a comma separated file, for those of you who don't know, commas separate the different columns in a CSV file. CSV is just a data format, right? Well, if you have that trailing comma, that is a problem, and therefore you need to be able to remove that. And I have just noticed that I have the old version on this server. So we are going to have to take a quick detour. We're going to have to run over to the demo server, and I'm going to have to log in there because I apparently neglected to export this and re-import it into documentation. So we'll just run over here real quick because I did set it up over here, although now for the life of me, I'm not sure I can remember what form I set it up on. But we'll go there. We'll go into my little folder. And I think it was this test form where I set it up yesterday. We'll look at our custom task event mapping tab, and there it is. And this is the one that we want to see. And this is the property I was talking about, remove trailing comma. So this is a new version of the custom task 2024.11.13. So it's still less than a month old in terms of its age as a custom task. This is not technically, of course, as a custom task part of the product per se, but you will have to download a new version of the custom tasks packages to import to get this brand new version of the export array to CSV custom task. But with that property, we just automatically remove the trailing comma at the end of every row. So that should solve any data import problems that you're running into as you're trying to bring that data into other databases like MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, whatever system it happens to be. Removing that trailing comma will be, I think, quite helpful. Attachment handling is going to change slightly, and this does require a little explanation. Let's take a look at a process timeline. You know what? I might as well just pin my content list so that I don't have to keep opening it up over and over again. So let's pop open a process timeline and let's create an activity of the process type. So there we now have a process activity, and let's go to the process tab. And there is this property right here, copy objects from sub process to this timeline. And there is also the copy objects in timeline package to child process. There's also something very similar, I believe, up here. Let me cancel this out. Copy objects from parent process to this timeline, and then copy objects in timeline package to parent. And this is the really important one. The way the product works now, 6.1.200 and all prior versions, when you check this property and you kick off a sub process, when the sub process ends, it will return all of the objects in that process instance back to the parent process instance. Straightforward so far. But what happens if you start a sub process and that sub process in turn starts a second sub process? We now not only have a child parent relationship between the initial process and sub process one, but we have a grandparent grandchild relationship with sub process two that got kicked off by sub process one. And I need, in many cases, to be able to get the objects that are in that grandchild process, which I guess is a new term that I'm just creating off the top of my head. We need to get back all the way up to the grandparent and move all of those objects up through 2 levels. So 6.1.300 is going to support this multi-level transfer from child objects all the way back up to whatever the ultimate parent has to be. So instead of, as the product works now, having a single level where we can transport from child back up to parent, we're now going to be able to transport from grandchild and presumably great-grandchild all the way back up to grandparent and great-grandparent. So you won't actually see a change in the UI. There's nothing in the UI that tells you that that is happening or that that change has occurred, but that will be a feature addition in the product. It will just work differently behind the scenes whenever you invoke it. And finally, some other enhancements, security improvements that I am not going to discuss at any level of detail whatsoever. We've just done a couple of nice little things to make things more secure, and that's about as much as I'm going to go into. You will note in the release notes for the product, there will be a couple of different Jira tickets that have, again, delightfully vague explanations that just say security enhancements were implemented in the product. I think one of them says security enhancements were implemented in the product to improve handling cross-site scripting attempts. But as is our practice, we will not be specific about security improvements that we've placed into the product. Finally, some bug fixes, which we can address very shortly. There's been some issues saving some documents in SharePoint where either the document was not getting saved or the document got saved, but it wasn't getting saved in the correct folder structure in SharePoint. So we've addressed that. There's a weird little issue for some types of forms where when you converted them to PDF, the routing slip would not show up. We discovered what that bug was, and now the routing slip appears in the PDF. In the report object, you have the ability, using the advanced reporting component, when you run the report, to export that report to other formats, one of which is CSV. And what we discovered was happening was when you export to CSV from a report itself, from the report object, it was throwing in binary break characters at the end of each line in CSV files, which causes way worse problems even than trailing commas do. So we fixed that. And those binary characters no longer appear in the CSV file. Of course, CSV files shouldn't have those binary characters as printable characters anyway. Sub-process form exports. If you have a process form that calls a sub-process form, and this is a little bit of an edge use case. Whenever we were exporting it from 6.1.200 back to a prior version, like 5.44.1104 or 6.0.x, the sub-process form was not exporting correctly. So that was another bug that we found and fixed. Like I said, that was a little weird edge case. There's some caching issues with business values. The way business values work, especially if you have cached data sources, is you make a request. The very first time you make it, the data gets drawn back, and then it gets held in a cache. And that cache is valid for a certain amount of time, at which point it expires. Other users should not be able to access that cache because that's kind of your cache. That wasn't happening quite properly, so there was some cache invalidation issues with people being able to access, or either not having the cache updated at the right time or accessing the wrong cache. So we've addressed that in 6.1.300. And another weird little issue, if you have a business value and you're using that business value like in a set form data tab of a form definition, and then you went back to the business value and decided to change the business value name, when you went back to the form definition, the name wasn't being updated. That's a pretty minor issue because the actual links are being done via the GUID, the actual ID of the business value. So the name is just really an arbitrary value. But because you're humans and that name is important, you need to see that arbitrary value. So it needs to be updated to whatever the current name of the business value is. It just wasn't updating the name. It wasn't causing any other technical problem. It was just that you weren't seeing the name of the business value you were expecting to see after you changed the name. And now you will, in fact, see that value when you change the name. And that is all that I have formally prepared for you. So I'm going to stop sharing. It doesn't appear that anyone has asked any questions over the course of the webinar, so I'm going to assume that I've explained everything adequately and we are done. Have a great week or a great month for those of you who don't show up to the training webinar. For those of you who do, I'll see you on Thursday. For the rest of you, I'll see you next month in January 2025. So see you next year. Have a great month. We'll talk to you next time. So long.